Hello and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones and let's get started.
And see if our guest for today has arrived. The SFPTG is joining. That sounds fun. How you doing over there, Carl? Your hair is looking especially electrified today. You're going for it. Okay, awesome. All right, well, I see that our guest for today has arrived, so let me find him. There he is. Let's see here. Spotlight Danny, and I'll spotlight myself. And let me see. Can you unmute yourself, Danny? Yeah, you're almost there.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Good job. Cool. Welcome, man.
Howdy.
How's it going? So,
a little hectic, but
a
I'm
little
here.
hectic day. Okay. Well, appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you being here. So I'll introduce you, and then we'll sort of jump in. And Danny's kind of a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine from back in high school. His brother and I were in a band, and so we've known each other a long time. And I thought he would actually make a good guest for us this week because he works with guitars. And I think we might have some interesting questions to ask him and see what's going on. But he's totally unfamiliar with what we do here, so we'll have to kind of fill him in as we go, and we'll get started. So I'm going to give a little intro, Danny. So there's people.
Cool.
There's a handful of people that watch on. There's like a YouTube, Facebook stream as well, and then we just have this small group. You know, we usually get about 50 to 100 here on Zoom. So I'll give a little intro. And then I'll
trying to make me nervous.
Yeah, don't be nervous, Danny. Then I'll give a little intro to you. I'll make sure you sound way better than you really are, so that you have to live up to some unrealistic expectations, and then we'll get started. Okay, so welcome everyone to Piano Tech Radio Hour. This is being brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online educational resource that offers you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You could find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And again, we're organizing a convention for September. We're excited about, you might have seen in recent emails that you can pre-register for that. So make sure you do. You don't have any commitment there. You just have to click a link. But that shows us that you're interested in attending, and we'll make sure and send you the best discount when the tickets become available. And if you think you'll be attending, make sure and reserve the dates. That's September 2nd, 10th, and the 17th. In terms of the days, we'll be talking about piano tech work. Okay, so our guest today's name is Danny Koentopp, and I'm going to give a little bio for him. And I told him, we're just going to have fun here today. He doesn't have to give any sort of presentation or anything. So we'll sort of go with where the conversation runs, and I'll let you know about Danny. So Danny studied product design at Columbia College in Chicago, where he focused on guitars. And after that, he met and apprenticed with a violin maker named Michael Darnton and joined a restoration team at Darnton and Hirsch Fine Violins, Chicago. He became greater acquainted with the ancestry of string instruments over, I believe, a 3-year period. Is what I got from your bio, practicing restoration techniques on six years? Is that right? Okay. So 6 years practicing restoration techniques on many museum quality instruments. And his mentor, Michael's work solely encompassed hand tools and traditions based upon methods from the 17th century. And so even though Danny makes guitars, this is the foundation of his practice of guitar making. And I'll do some share screens later, and you could get a sense of the type of instruments that Danny makes, but they're just beautiful, incredible instruments that he builds, and also sound quite nice as well. And I'll say, although Danny has been acquainted with a lot of power tools over the years, after studying with Michael and sort of learning efficient use of hand tools, he says that sometimes it's almost faster to do things by hand. And that's interesting too, just for us piano technicians, what tools we use. I know a lot of piano techs, need to use hand tools in various situations. So anyways, that's Danny. That's my bio. How did that bio go? Did I give a good? Did I give a good bio?
I think I have a lot to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Add away.
So prior to going to product design school, I studied at SUNY Purchase guitar performance, and that I studied classical guitar for a long time. Since I was a teenager, and in terms of what I now, that along with the product design has really shaped how I view what I do, because in the classical guitar world, you see these instruments with like unlimited potential, and I was fixated on the archtop guitar, but I was always in my mind trying to connect the two, and found that there wasn't really a connection. And then I found that connection when I was studying the violin restoration work with the carved instruments, and that kind of fueled my archtop design. And then going to school for design work, I did learn a ton about technology and what I can do with the computer. And so now I'm in this perfect world of combining the two, because there's certainly a lot of things I can do that in terms of tool design that I've implemented through use of computer design, and the doing things by hand is a fun thing. That the idea being that the next time you do something, to try to do it faster, like that mind game of, and that's something that Michael did. He's like, every time you do something, try to do it better, but also a little bit faster than the previous time you did it.
Cool.
I can go on and on and on. So,
no, that sounds sufficient. Yeah, I didn't add the part about your study of guitar, but I think that is very relevant to add to the conversation. So you've been doing this now for how many years? Have you been sort of your own independent archtop guitar maker?
I got laid off in 2008, 2009 from Darn and Hirsch because of the market collapse. Our shop basically facilitated the sales of these fine instruments, and when they didn't have sales, they had to let the restoration team go, and that was like a blessing for me. When I first got into the violin world, I was afraid that it was going to take away from my guitar making direction, and thank God it just fueled it. And so being laid off was kind of a blessing, because I took everything I learned with Michael and put every single unemployment check into starting a new business. But I made my first guitar with my dad when I was 17. So I've been doing it for a little over 20 years, but on record since 2009.
Was that the first instrument that you sold in 2009? Guitar?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I think it was.
Approximately.
Yeah. I think maybe I was on like I've got maybe 10 guitars beneath that are numbered, but probably not worth, they're sitting under a bed somewhere or in an ash pile.
All right. Let me make sure I fix my audio a little bit. I know there's a little bit of echo in this room, so I just moved my mic closer. Somebody tipped me off there. Are you getting my audio okay, Danny?
Yeah, coming in great.
Cool. Yeah, so I thought it'd just be interesting to have this conversation like with someone who works in guitars because, in some senses we're similar. We have piano makers, piano repair people. We work with wood, we work with metal, we work with mechanical parts. We probably have to deal with humidity fluctuations and, think about the considerations of wood kind of stretching and aging, drying out, humidity, and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of questions for you guys.
Yeah, well, why don't you
Like
ask a question that you might have for us? That could be a fun way to start the conversation.
just
And I
just that
definitely, I want, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say just that list of runoff things that you mentioned. The first thing I think of is like how do you adjust what you do for a player. So restoration work or making a piano, how much of that is what I do is very much tailored to a specific person, from the voice of the instrument to the setup. And the setup, I mean, I think is such an important thing that often gets overlooked. And when you understand setup, you can make, a not so great guitar sound really great. And is that
And
something?
so
Is there like
it's
a go for it?
so yeah. Tell us what setup means in terms of a guitar. So I'm assuming some adjustments that you make, and there's various parameters. What are the adjustments that make, and how does that change the player's experience with the instrument? And then I'll tell you what the analog is, because I'm
Well,
pretty sure there is. Yeah.
for me, if it depends how broad you think of the word setup, right? I mean, so when I'm working for somebody, all of this stuff from the communication and getting somebody's energy, knowing their playing style, what the overall purpose of the instrument, is going to be. Like everything is important, from the wood you choose to how that flavors the sound, the neck angle, the bridge projection, neck relief, and I feel like it's a little bit minimal to just say setup is just string height, because when you're doing something so specific for one person, it starts at zero.
Right.
And that's kind of the issue that the guitar world faces. And I'm getting off topic here, but the guitar has always been a mass-produced thing, and now we're beginning to see all these makers, and like how I want to make the art shop sound more like a classical instrument, where a player picks up an instrument and plays it first and listens to it with their eyes closed, and then when they're done playing with it, they look at it. And up till now, everybody's just shopping it for guitars based on how glossy it is and how beautiful it looks. And I think that's kind of backwards. So what I'm doing is very, very specific. And in the violin world, everything, no matter how small it is, it contributes to the whole. Mm-hmm. So if we go back to the setup idea, how big the guitar is, your choice of different tone woods, obviously, whether you want to do something like rosewood or ebony can flavor the sound, maple or mahogany, sound holes. There's a lot of variances that you can do to push the guitar in one direction or another. And I find that the communication between myself and my customer or my client is so important. And for reasons that I can't explain, it's that communication that allows me to do things that I wouldn't do by myself. Sometimes I'm led down certain wormholes, which I'm grateful for, and sometimes not so much. But I feel like in the end, it's always successful, because the more communication from that client is seen when the guitar is done. And in a way, the instrument isn't really finished when it leaves my shop. It's, the journey continues. But going back to setup, the end thing is, once you have the system done, there are those little tweaks and adjustments you can do. Obviously, we're working with organic matter that change. So when you apply tension, things change. So it's important to have, things built into your system that you can manipulate for, the end user.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about what I think the analog is of the setup that you talked about. And then actually I'd love to just jump to your website to show people, kind of give them at least a better experience of what you do. I think it could be interesting to sort of, even though you said, touching and playing the guitars is the best, kind of take a look at them because they're also beautiful, and just get a sense of, who is Danny and what's his business like. But it sounds very similar. And what happens, it seems, in the piano industry is similar to what's going on with you in your industry, is this, being able to communicate with the client is of utmost importance for those who want to be at the high end of what they do. And sometimes that can be difficult, because we're, at least for piano technicians, a lot of us are kind of like very technical, gosh, maybe we're even like on the autistic spectrum, not like really great at communication naturally with other people. And then but we're good at communicating with each other, using technical terminology, and there can be a lot of snags, about a client saying what they want or what a problem is, and then we have to do the work of translating, well, what do they really mean in our language, but beyond that, basically the analog of what you're talking about with setup, I think, is regulation, and potentially voicing of a piano. So, just like, the string height is going to affect how people feel the playing of the guitar, on a piano, we can adjust the action so that it's more even, from note to note. We can even go deeper and adjust sort of the leverage, that people get out of a particular key. And across the keyboard, you can change the weights and the angles within the piano action, to make it more to someone's liking. And there's a lot of, fine elements that you could tweak. And much like what you said about setup, I saw you kind of talking about sort of the basic thing of maybe string height, and then saying, well, it can almost go to the whole design of the guitar, like setting it up for the individual. And we often talk about that, how, voicing is something that we do that's a little bit more advanced technique in piano work. And that in its simplest form, it's, kind of manipulating the felt of the hammers of the piano. You use needles, you could use chemicals, and making sure that the quality of the wool in the hammer that hits the string is such that when it hits the string, it produces the best tone. And but a lot of advanced piano technicians will say, okay, but it's not just that. The voicing kind of extends all the way to the tuning of the piano and the leveling of the strings, and adjusting all sorts of other factors. And it seems like the main discrepancy between what you're doing, well, besides that it's a totally different instrument, but the main discrepancy between what you're doing and what we're doing is you actually have the capacity to design the full instrument for the player. We, for the most part, have to take an instrument as it is and, make it sound good for the player. And you can do a lot to tweak it, but we have the basic structure, to start with.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I find that the communication is probably the most important thing, because you can always do something for somebody where the communication you can never connect with somebody. And when you start early in the process, you can kind of weed sometimes when you know that whatever you do is not going to work out for somebody. You can kind of like, that kind of resolves itself because you don't mesh very well. I've been in a situation where you're trying to do something for somebody that, they're not experienced, and they're never going to be happy. And that certainly ended up with me, and I've learned from those experiences, because like you said, everything matters, from every little detail, from, like, I'm sure you put the piano on a wood floor or a rug or in a certain room or something, it changes everything. And so a lot of people get it, and then some people just want to go along for the ride, and luckily it's only happened to me one or two times, and I've learned from it. But for the most part, it's always a fun journey.
Are there common miscommunications with a guitar player? Like they say this about the guitar, but you know they mean this. Like we have,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. And it's a problem because of the history of the guitar. For instance, like bracing, parallel bracing, which it's not, it's usually not parallel. It's where your tone bars are like this as opposed to X bracing. A lot of times people use the words like bright, for, and in my mind, and in my instruments, I hear parallel bars actually sounding more mellow, almost more like a classical guitar. Um, and I think the difference is when you're comparing it to an X brace has more stiffness and more bounce to it. So it has more low end. And I think the comparative difference is people think that one sounds bright and one sounds um, bassy. Um, and it's wrong. And then there's the difference of like a lot of times people are like, I want a warm sound. I want something that sounds warm. And you have to dive a little bit deeper. Sometimes that's where the communication is so important, because you can both analyze audio together and talk about it, or talk about certain players. And it's so interesting because the more you do that, you realize how much is in the fingers and not the instrument. Like so many players, if you think about like Joe Pass or some, famous jazz players who played different instruments, they sound the same on a Jazzmaster solid body electric guitar as they do on a hollow body guitar. So there's a lot of education involved of telling people, that's just part of, I find it gives me more confidence to have that conversation as opposed to just making guitar models and cranking them out. And it's funny when I do get the phone call that somebody's like, I want to learn jazz guitar. So can you make me a guitar? And my first answer is yes, you've come to the right place. But it's like, go look in your alley for, a guitar that was thrown out, and learn how to set it up yourself. And, I think more musicians and in general can look at drummers for this. Like my brother is a drummer, and I've always, when I see players who are afraid of doing the actual setup themselves, so that's the difference too between what you guys do in the guitar world, where the user, the player, can usually do most adjustments themselves. But I would say 80% of those people are afraid to do it. Drummers have to like take their whole kit apart, and when they put new heads or whatever, everything's in pieces. So they understand that the setup, and they would never have somebody come in and do that. And in the guitar world, it's like people are afraid to tighten a truss rod or lower a bridge, or do really easy things. So
No, that's interesting. let me share a screen here, and I'll get folks to see a little bit of your website. And I don't know if there's something specific that you think is worth checking out, but in the end, I'll just go to the home page here and just give people a general idea. Let me share, and we'll go here and here. Cool. So this is Danny's business. Like we said, you've been in it since officially maybe 2008 or 9, right? In terms of getting started selling these guitars, and you've come a long way in what you've done here. Looks like we just had Wayne Ferguson join. I know he actually likes to make guitars, so he might have some fun questions for you.
Cool.
So you make the guitars from scratch, and you said you design them. Do you always design them on like a computer using like a CAD machine or something like that? What's the process?
Yeah. Well, so I've what I've learned from the violin world is that everything is built off of simple relationships. And after studying product design and learning learning CAD and CAM. It's so easy. There's programs out there that are just built on geometric relationships. So actually, when I was building art shops for a couple years, and then I decided I moved to California in 2013, and I didn't have a shop for a couple years because I was in the transition of moving my shop and setting it up and building a new shop. And so I spent a lot of time like redoing everything from the beginning. And I basically redesigned the instrument with circles. That's how the Cremonese violin makers, based everything was off of circle relationships. So I kind of wanted to see if I could do it. And I did do it. This is you can see.
Oh, wait, let me see. Yeah, what is it? What do we got there? Okay, so I can see the sort of shape of the guitar middle there.
Yeah, it's basically my outline that's built off of circles in the relationship of, they're all based on multiples of like 4-inch, 8-inch circles. Huh. And I wanted to kind of see how far I could take it with my arching. So not only did I do my arching like that, or my outline like that, but the way I did my top arch and my back arch are also in relationship to the outline. So I just took it as a challenge to try to relate everything as simple as I could back to like one common element. And with the computer, it's just so amazing because you can do this relatively easily, and you can manipulate things, and it's so powerful to it does far more than I could do analog. And now with this geometry, I can cut molds, make tools. And so now basically I'm using it as far as I can take it to where basically it's doing everything that I was doing before by hand up to a certain point. And it's just so consistent, and there's it's a great tool. There's a lot of there's a lot of negativity based on the digital side of things, but I always think to myself that if Stradivari were alive today, he would be a CAD monkey, because the way that he thought is so stuck in just the relationships of everything, and to think of it as this amazing tool. Certainly you can go too far, and a lot of people have done that, and the computer and CAD has allowed everybody to make guitars in their garage, but to harness its power, and you understand as long as you understand the importance of everything, and so many people are just using the computer. You see it in car design, right? Like cars just look like absolute shit, because people are just moving lines and sculpting in space without any form of relationship or whatever. Whereas you go back 50 years, that everybody was, sculpting with math and form. So right, I don't know. Michael always taught me that like he could teach anybody to use tools correctly, but you can't always teach somebody to see things correctly. And working with those instruments really changed me, because you could not only see the handwork involved, they weren't buffing things out to a high gloss. You could see fingerprints, you could see knife marks, you could you would judge what instrument came from what maker based upon the style of the instrument and the way that they carved a certain thing, as opposed to a label that says made in Kalamazoo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how similar it is, but it reminds me, Dale Irwin, who's a guy that's joined us, who's been doing piano rebuilding for many years. He says, I could teach you how to do something, but I can't make you care. and that's,
It's
he
so
kind
true.
of makes that point, like, you really have to care. That's really the most important ingredient. Once you learn how to do something, then it gets done well. I have a question here actually from Carl Lieberman, who's actually out by you. Where are you located? You're in the Los Angeles area, right?
Me?
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
right now, but
yeah, I'm in Hawthorne, which is not too far from LAX, and
oh, okay. Very
SpaceX
close.
has put Hawthorne on the map.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Yeah, Carl's also out there in Los Angeles. So Carl asks, when I adjust my fender precision, I use the front bridge adjusters to try and make the 12th fret and the 12th fret harmonic the same. I think he's meant to have different frets mentioned there. Is that the best that you can do?
This is a really interesting topic because, I mean, it's not like a piano, like a fretted instrument is always going to be slightly, it's not going to be as precise. You can do that by tuning the octave. I think he's saying like, what do you do for intonation? And what I do, because I make my bridges, that I cut in the intonation based upon the octave. And you're basically tuning the octave at the 12th fret. But
when you say cutting in, you mean that just kind of like making placing the fret, or what does cutting in mean?
Adjusting the distance. So when I make a saddle, that's the bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I shape my saddle, I cut in the distance for every single string so that I'm able to fine tune the octave. And so that goes back to the setup, because you want to know, how the player's going to play, because the height of the string changes the intonation, and then you get into like, you could go super deep at, the guitar is never really in tune because we use our fingers to stretch string all across the fingerboard. So I think that's really the standard setup, as to kind of getting an even intonation across the whole fretboard. But just the nature of having frets and a stretched string, you can never be 100% in tune. That's just the nature of the beast. But
I got another question here from Jim Kelly. He said, is there a guitar for left-hand dominant players? How about for players with small hands?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've made some left-handed guitars for some left-handed clients. It's the same thing. It's an interesting mind game to make something exactly the same but mirrored. So it's a fun process to go through. A mirror is often, I'll stay on topic here. But essentially it's the same guitar. And for somebody with small hands, like, here's another way of designing the guitar from the ground up, of, choosing scale length. A lot of times the length of the instrument kind of not only makes it physically easier to play, but it changes the whole vibe of the instrument and the voice of the instrument. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do to tailor it. I wouldn't say that I would design a guitar for every single person, because I do have to think of what I do as a business. And so the tooling that I've made and the jigs that I've made fit a certain amount of models that I make. Within that, there's a lot you can do. But if somebody came to me, asking me to make like a Star Wars shaped guitar, I'd probably say I'm not the person to do it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So what is the process of making a guitar for someone? So I'm assuming at this point, there's a bit of word of mouth. Somebody maybe plays a guitar that someone else has, or sees them playing a guitar that you've made, and they go, hey, I like that. And they say, oh yeah, go talk to Danny. Is that, and then you kind of get the conversation started and find out what they're looking for, start to design it. Can you just, how much am I
Yeah,
right or wrong on there?
no,
And what are details?
that's pretty much like right on. Most of my orders come from word of mouth. There's an energy about social media. I hate social media, but you got to be in it. And I try to limit myself a lot because um, but the energy of creating something, shooting photos, as an instrument maker, you have to be you have to have all of these skills, which you guys do too, materials, and I do everything. And the energy of like that story and its creation, like when you share it and all of a sudden you have finished content, it creates interest. And so for me, like social media has been very good in orders, and it always falls in when I have those finished shots or videos and people are playing. When I'm not working, I don't get orders. And this is an interesting thing too that I can't explain. When I'm not working, or I'm not, even if I'm posting, but I'm just, the energy for whatever reason is when I'm working and good things are happening, I get work and it comes in. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in my work that I can't explain, that I just don't question. I just keep going. And but for the most part, word of mouth, other musicians posting their videos is great. I stopped paying for any marketing. It's just not worth it. It's the work that we do in itself is the best advertising that we could have, I think.
And once they connect with you, do you have a set of questions that you typically ask, or are they kind of driving the bus
So
on telling you what they want?
it depends, because some people are really great and they want to talk on the phone. Some people just want to email, which to be honest can be a huge pain in the ass, because I've had email chains that are like 40 things long with just so much writing, and I try to avoid that, because communication and just hearing somebody's voice, you could learn a lot about who they are and what makes them smile that you can't get through an email. So phone call is always better. I like a phone call better than video because I'm more of that introverted type. But I mean, I could talk all day about guitar, and I usually do. So even if we're not talking about guitar design, there are a lot of questions that I'll ask right away that I know will really center the build. And usually if they're calling me, it usually means that they're interested. They've already crossed that bridge. So if somebody sends me an email that's like one sentence, I'll respond and say everything that I need to say. If somebody sends me an email that's a couple paragraphs long of what they're looking for or whatever, it's like, okay, like, you have a good feeling about it. So the conversation will go, obviously, like what model you're looking at, or what you've seen that you like, and what kind of music you play. Then it leads to me talking about how the specifications of size and different things influence different sounds. And you can tell by their response, what they want, or how they want to move it. Sometimes the physicality plays a lot. Obviously, like a player who's tall with big hands, he's not going to want a small guitar at a short scale. Maybe he will, and maybe that's something that he wants. But those are all things that help push a guitar towards a certain way. But like somebody came to me and they wanted a warm sounding guitar. The first thing I would do is talk about scale length, because scale length really is, do you want like power and volume, or do you kind of shrink it a little bit and get more looseness and more warmth and build the guitar a little lighter? you know, and then there's certain things you can do with tone wood to add flavor. It's not so different than like talking. I think I say this a lot to my clients. It's like having a chef, right? It's the same thing. You have, do you want steak or do you want salmon? And I've always believed that the more simplistic things are, the better they are, you know, like Italian food as opposed to, I don't know. But
Mostaccioli.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's I think this, you know, I've done guitars with tons of inlay and crazy shit for people, but more and more and more I'm finding that like the more you can get the best materials, respect the materials, and keep things simple while making this a live thing that represents the buyer, is, you know, it's just magic. There's something that happens that I can't explain.
Yeah.
Like
What's the?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead if you had something to finish off with. Yeah.
I was gonna say people say like, why do your guitars sound the way they do? And it's weird for me to think about. It's I don't like. It's who I am and how I envisioned my guitars I wanted to be, and as a result, the process reflects that. But it's not like I set out to do it. It's not like I set out to say like, okay, I want like a really, really like balanced, orchestrated sounding guitar that's clear and responsive. And it's just a result of the process that I've learned to do with Michael.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, my next question was, how long does it take once so somebody contracts with you? Yes, we want this guitar. You have the initial discussions with them, and then I'm assuming it's got to take at least a few weeks, a few months. You know, probably not as long as a year.
This is like a loaded question because COVID just totally destroyed all of that. I've right now I've got like a 4-year wait list. So somebody will contact me, and I always say it's a good thing. Like the more communication, the better. And sometimes I'll have people who come to me with an idea, and then by the time we start the process, it's totally different. And when I start an instrument, when I'm working full time in the shop, I do 2 at a time, and it takes me about 4 months. But I mean, last year I did 2 instruments just because of, you know, situations.
Right. Interesting. So
Yeah.
so from the time someone comes to you, they're not going to see a guitar for 4 years.
Right now, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just
That
delivered a
takes patience.
guitar. Yeah, I mean, I you know, this gets into like having help, or I always, when I discuss this with my wife's family, who are all like business type, they all like talk to me about numbers and speed and efficiency, and they're like, why can't you hire somebody? You have all this work, why can't you just do it? And you can't. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation of having apprentices.
I tell you to charge more at least.
Double
your prices.
I'm at a good spot.
Yeah.
If I could keep doing what I'm doing now, and it took me a long time to understand. I had a lot of anxiety about my wait list, of the sense of like, I have these projects in my queue, and that I had to keep telling people that I'm sorry, like, you know, it's not when I originally told them. But I've slowly learned that, you know, I've talked to all these people, and they're okay. But the other thing is too, I've evolved my process from when I talked initially to these people. So the guitar they ordered, I'm making something, I would say, totally different from what they ordered, but 100% better than what they ordered.
Yeah.
So the process it's taken me more time. If I was doing the same guitar I sold them a couple years back, I could do it in half the time. but I'm doing so much more now that I think is are evolved improvements that I have to do it that way. If I didn't do it, I got to respect the process, and I can't rush things, right? It's like,
Yeah,
whatever.
that makes sense. I have a question here from Donna Bird. She says, when a guitar player says the instrument is tuned to a detuning, is there a correlation between equal temperament tuning and non-equal temperament tunings? Do you get that question?
I mean, it's no, I mean, it's no, it's in this gray area because um, it's non-equal temperament tuning. Um, it's the same. It's the same as the guitar fretted. You know, it's an instrument with fixed nodes on it, with a stretched string. So even that you're tuning down to an alternative tuning, you're still stuck with the same system.
The same pitch is available, right? And does that mean
Yeah.
detuning? Is that when you just take the lowest string and make it a D instead of an E, or is there some more to that?
Yeah, I mean, people do it. There's so many different tunings that people do. They'll drop the D. Sometimes they'll yeah, I've seen people do a drop D and change more than that, like the G to an F sharp even. And
Got it.
but when you do that, you know, so that gets back into the setup. If you know your client's going to do that, there are things that to talk to them about, including like a longer scale, so that when you do tune down your string, there's still a lot of tension there, and it increases it almost sounds more like itself. If you did a detuning in a short scale guitar, it would buzz out and sound fluffy because there's not enough tension in the string.
Right. And then the player has to reorchestrate how they're going to play chords, right? Now that the lowest note is a different pitch.
And that's on the player.
Yeah, they got to figure that one out.
Yeah.
I have another question from Carol. What is your rule guidelines in choosing strings? Hard, normal, soft, tensions? Also, do you have some tips for making sustain of a note a little bit longer?
Strings are always a fun topic. I feel like they offer a player lots of different flavors if you stay within the same tension. If you have a magnetic pickup on your guitar, you want a string that has some magneticity, like nickel. There's so many different alloys and so many different string companies that a lot of times I ask the player. I am going through this phase now where I'm starting to find some new strings that I like based on others' recommendations. You know, when I set up an instrument, I burn through like 4 packs of strings, and so you don't want to use strings that cost $50. But you also want to set the guitar up with the strings that are going to be used in the end. I'm usually, I feel like the best gauge for me, my guitars are what I call 12s. It's like, you know, they do that based on the high E string. The high E string is 12 thousandths. And that's kind of like a medium in the, you know, it's funny. There are companies that say that's a light gauge, and there's some companies that say it's a medium gauge. It's all based on you and what you know. You know, like a long scale guitar can handle a heavier gauge, and it feels more normal. Whereas a short scale, if you put on say 13s, they just don't work because there's too much mass in the string and there's not enough tension. So I found that there's mics that I like to build in, or they sit in this middle ground of between scale length and string tension. And you can kind of deviate from that based on what the client wants. But for the most part, unless you have a guitar that's, you know, if you're doing restoration work, on an instrument that's old and was set up with gut strings or nylon strings. In the classical guitar world, the tension has a bigger difference because there's this pull factor of the strings, and classical guitars change a lot over time with the tension and the pull. It's not rare that classical guitars burn out after being heavily played by artists who perform on them like heavily all the time. And in most cases, those guitar players just get new instruments. And what happens is players keep increasing the tension to get more and more sound out of the instrument, but as a result, they end up killing the guitar. And so, you know, I did an archtop guitar that I kind of transitioned into a nylon string guitar just for the kicks of it. And I couldn't find classical strings with high enough tension that made it. I just wanted to keep increasing tension because the archtop guitar works on a downward vector force as opposed to a pull force. So I wanted strings that were like really, really high tension. They just don't make them. So now I'm like, okay, I need to redesign the instrument, which is a project on the back burner. I don't know if I answered any of that question.
Let's see if there's another. Well, we only have like less than 10 minutes here. Do you think there's a video or two on your YouTube channel that might be interesting watching a minute or two? If I open it up, here, I've got it here.
Yeah.
Looks like we could potentially hear a guitar, but it looks like you also have some interesting.
Well,
do you have
if
video?
you look at so this is a tool I'm kind of proud of. If you look at that, it says Koentopp cutaway bender.
Let's see
to the right. It's
just a second.
Right there.
Here?
You're over it. Yeah. So this is a really classic. This is kind of how I was describing. This was a tool I made with. I could not have done this without the use of a computer. And
actually,
after years and years and years of bending over a hot pipe, this idea kind of evolved. When I was bending over a pipe, eventually I was like, well, why can't the pipe be the shape of that I want? Like as I was bending wood over this pipe, I was like, if this form was the same as the shape of my what I was trying to bend to, it would be a lot easier. So that kind of led to this. This is a tool that basically bends wood by use of silicone heating blankets in like a metal sandwich. And if you hit
play, I'll hit play. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so here I'm put the wood in. So you kind of get the idea of it.
Yeah.
But there was nothing like this that existed before. And it came about for me doing the analog version. I did it flat first on a table, and I realized that if I just put it upright, that it would work better. Then I realized that by spinning it, it would do the work for me. So this tool kept evolving. This is like the 4th generation of this prototype, and man, it works so well.
That's awesome. And the wood seems very flexible, right? Am I right?
I mean, that's the beauty of wood.
It's because it's like sliced so thin. Is that kind of what makes it so malleable?
I mean, yeah, it's a bunch of when you heat wood up with steam and moisture, it becomes malleable, and then when it cools, that's the nature of wood, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's usually done over a hot pipe, and there's other tools that exist that will bend wood in a form, but there was nothing up till that point. There was nothing. I would always bend my cutaways by hand because there's no other way to do it. And like I said, after doing it for so long, I began to see this tool, and
this is the shape that you're making, like right here. You can see it at the other edge of the guitar, right?
Yeah, and it's really difficult to do with a jig because it's basically you're bending two curves at one time. And you could do it over a hot pipe because you can maintain control, but in any machine or like a mold situation, one of the curves always gets in the way.
So is there any one of these videos of someone playing a guitar that we could listen to before we chat? Any ones you might recommend?
You can play that. The first one, or
this Joseph Yoon.
Either that one or the next one. You could do that.
This one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's check out a little bit of that.
Hello, I'm Will Braun. I'm holding this beautiful Danny Kaye.
What's that? Fast forward? Where should I go?
Yeah, there you go.
Right here?
Keep going. Sure.
Here? Okay.
Yeah.
Purfling going on. Kent Armstrong floating pickup here, as well as a Richard Barbera.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Keep going. Yeah, nobody wants to hear me talk anymore.
Oh, they might. I get to see. Well, it's interesting to see the parts of the guitar. I'm assuming he plays it pretty soon. So let's check out a little bit and then listen to it.
Pickup. Both of those are controlled separately at this upper sound port, with both a volume control for the Barbera and a volume and tone for the Kent Armstrong. And we'll be hearing Will Bram demonstrate this guitar in 4 different ways. One purely acoustic. The second one is going to be just the Kent Armstrong. The third will be the Barbera, and the fourth will be a combination of the 2 pickups in stereo. Hope you enjoy.
Really cool stuff. Beautiful sounding. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, what's that? That's Will?
I was gonna say it's all Will.
Oh, that's him. Yeah. You just handed him an instrument. Cool. Well, we usually cut it off at about an hour, and I know you have all kinds of things going on today, so we can definitely jet here soon. But I think this has been pretty fun. I hope you feel like it was worth it. I like the idea of bridging the gap between various instrument technicians and makers. So feel free to reach out if you got any other fun ideas. But yeah, anything else you want to say in parting?
No, it's been super fun. It's really cool to talk to other craftspeople, and I often find myself like so intrigued when I go to the dentist or go to the eye doctor, where, especially the dentist, where they're working on like our organic teeth and like doing restoration work and the tools that they use. You know, so finding different situations where people are doing the same thing is always interesting. Like cooking.
Cool.
I love cooking because I am not stressed out about fucking something up. Sorry.
It's all right. No problem. Awesome.
Yeah, but thanks for having me.
Great. Well, we'll have to have some dentists on the radio hour sometime.
Definitely.
I think I don't know whether that's going to be a popular session, but we could give it a try.
You should definitely talk to Michael Darnton.
Oh yeah, the violin maker. Yeah, you should connect me. I've been wanting to have a violin maker.
He's just a genius.
Yeah, please connect
we didn't talk about
I do know
tools.
A guy.
We didn't talk about hand tools or like the craft or anything.
Yeah, we didn't even get to it. Well, you're welcome to come back. Yeah, definitely. If you're interested in coming back, I think it'd be really fun. And if you had like hand tools specifically that you thought would be cool to show or share about, I think we'd have fun with that.
Definitely. I was trying to get my internet in my shop is really not good, and I was trying to get out there today, but I just couldn't. But it would be, I think it would benefit the conversation to do a conversation out there, because then I could show you a lot, and I think it would bring more questions. And
I'll send you a big long Ethernet cable, and you can stretch it out there. I've done that before.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you get like a 50, 100-foot Ethernet cable, and it's fine.
Smart.
Cool,
Thanks,
man.
Ethan.
Well, yeah, no, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. So yeah, for everyone here, thank you for attending. We left some links in the chat if you want to check out our previous convention recordings, leave some feedback, or sign up for Radio Hour Direct Access. You can do that. Otherwise, we'll see you all on the flip side.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.